Three things are happening right now that are sending campervan owners to the side of the road with flashing lights behind them. Most of them didn't see it coming. And if you're planning to buy a campervan in the next 12 months, you need to hear this before you hand anyone a check. In this video, I'm going to walk you through three specific enforcement triggers that are catching campervan owners off guard in 2026, not because they're bad drivers, but because they bought wrong, built wrong, or just didn't know the rules had changed. I'm also going to tell you exactly which buyer types are most at risk, what to check before you drive a single mile, and the one scenario where a roadside stop doesn't cost you a fine, it costs you your entire insurance claim. If you're a retiree, a couple planning a long trip, or anyone researching a campervan purchase right now, stay with me. This is the part your dealer will not tell you. Section 1. The window tint trap. Let's start with the one that surprises people the most, because it sounds minor until it isn't. Window tint. Now, I know what you're thinking. Tint is a cosmetic detail, not a legal emergency. That's exactly what most buyers think, and that's exactly why so many of them end up pulled over. Here's the problem. Window tint laws are not national. There is no single federal standard. Every state sets its own rules, and those rules vary significantly, particularly for vans, SUVs, and larger vehicles. What's legal in the state where you bought your van may be illegal in the state where you're spending the winter. And if you're a retiree driving cross-country for 3 to 6 months at a time, you're moving through different legal environments every few days. Your van either complies everywhere on your route, or it doesn't, and most buyers don't know which one is true. Florida has been actively updating and tightening its tint enforcement in 2026, and it's one of the states where law enforcement is actively using tint meters during roadside stops. California treats window tint as a primary offense, meaning an officer who suspects your tint is non-compliant has grounds to initiate a stop. If it comes to it, officers can use a tint meter to measure your windows on the spot. The point isn't that every officer will stop every dark van. The point is that if your tint is non-compliant and you're in a state that treats it as a primary offense, you've handed someone a legal reason to pull you over. And once you're pulled over, everything else on your van is visible. That second part matters more than the tint itself, because a traffic stop that starts as a tint issue can become an equipment inspection. And if your van has other compliance problems, and I'm going to explain 2 more shortly, the tint is just the door that got opened. Now here's why this hits campervan buyers specifically. Most campervans, particularly converted Sprinters, Transits, and ProMaster builds, come with aftermarket window film installed as part of the build. It's done for privacy, temperature management, or aesthetics. Conversion companies treat it as a standard feature. The buyer assumes it was installed legally. They assume someone checked the applicable laws. Most of the time, nobody did, because the converter's job is to build the van, not to verify compliance across all 50 states. So before you take delivery of any new or used campervan, you need 3 pieces of information: the visible light transmission percentage on every window, the legal minimum for each state on your route, and confirmation that those 2 things are compatible. If they're not, you retint before you leave. It's a fixable problem, but only if you know about it before you're already 2,000 miles from home. That one is annoying, but it's fixable. You peel off the film, replace it with compliant tint, done. The next problem cannot be solved by peeling off anything. It's baked into your van the moment you buy it or build it, and most people don't discover they have a problem until they're already on the road, sometimes until they've had an accident. Section 2. The GVWR weight problem. This is the one I want you to take seriously because it's the most financially dangerous and the most commonly ignored. Gross Vehicle Weight Rating, GVWR. That number is printed on a sticker on the inside of your driver's door jamb. It represents the absolute maximum total weight your vehicle is designed to carry. The van itself, the conversion, the water, the fuel, the gear, the batteries, the bikes on the rack, and every person inside it. That number is not a suggestion. It's a structural and safety ceiling set by the manufacturer based on what the braking system, the suspension, the tires, and the frame can handle. Here's the problem for campervan buyers. A conversion adds weight, a significant amount of weight. A professionally built camper conversion, the furniture, the insulation, the flooring, the electrical system, the cabinetry, the plumbing, the water tank, can add anywhere from several hundred to over 1,000 pounds, depending on how it's built. On some platforms, in some configurations, the math gets very tight, very fast. And here's the line I want you to remember. You can be over your GWVR before you leave the driveway, not at the end of a long trip when everything's accumulated, before you leave, with your normal gear, your normal water, your normal passengers, already over. If you're operating above your vehicle's rated capacity, that's a safety problem regardless of what any law says. The braking distances are longer than the system was designed for, the tires are under more stress than they're rated to handle, the suspension is carrying more than it was built to carry. None of that becomes less true just because nobody has weighed your van yet. But here's what makes this more than a safety problem, and this is what most people don't find out until it's too late. If you're in an accident while operating above your vehicle's rated capacity, your insurer may investigate whether that weight contributed to what happened. Depending on your policy language, the jurisdiction, and the specific circumstances, they may have grounds to dispute or limit your claim. This is not guaranteed to happen, but it is a documented risk that multiple policy frameworks allow for, and it means you could spend $80,000, $100,000, $130,000 on a camper van, get into an accident that wasn't your fault, and find your coverage in serious question because you were carrying more than the door sticker says you should be. That conversation with your insurer is not the one you want to have on the side of a highway. And the enforcement picture reinforces this. In states like California, RVs above certain weight thresholds may be directed into weight stations. Even in states where recreational vehicles are generally exempt from mandatory weight station stops, law enforcement conducting a roadside inspection, triggered by something else, like a tint stop, can include a weight check. So the tint problem and the weight problem are not independent risks. One can expose the other. Now, here's what the emotionally driven buyer does. They walk through the van at the dealership and they think, look at that kitchen, look at that bed, look at how it all fits together. That's the lifestyle I want. And they write the check.
Here's what the smart buyer does. They ask for the van's GVWR, its curb weight, and the listed weight of the conversion. They subtract. They think about how they actually travel, full water, full gear, 2 people, bikes. They figure out whether the remaining margin is realistic. And if the number is thin, they either reconsider the platform, reconsider the build, or they at minimum go into ownership knowing exactly where their limits are. Because the right campervan is not the one with the best kitchen, it's the one that keeps you legal, safe, and insured for the next 5 years. The most practical thing I can tell you right now, before you take any campervan on a serious trip, drive it to a CAT scale at a truck stop. Load it exactly as you would for a real journey. Full water, full fuel, both passengers, everything. Get the actual number. Compare it to your door sticker's GVWR. If you're over, you need to know that now, not after. Everything I've described so far applies to most campervans regardless of what's powering them. But the third enforcement trigger is more targeted. It hits a specific type of vehicle in specific states, and the enforcement mechanism behind it is more active than most van owners realize. If you are considering or currently own a larger diesel-powered campervan or motorhome, this next section is specifically for you. Section 3. The Diesel Emissions Enforcement Problem. California's Clean Truck Check Program. If you haven't heard of it, you're about to understand why it matters. Here's the framework. The program applies to diesel and alternative fuel heavy-duty vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating over 14,000 pounds that operate on California public roads, whether they're registered in California or not. If you drive it in California and it's a qualifying vehicle, you're subject to the program. Now here's the distinction that matters most for campervan buyers specifically, and I want to be precise about this because the category confusion costs people money. Most Class B campervans built on a standard Sprinter 2500 do not come close to the 14,000-pound GVWR threshold. A standard Sprinter 2500 has a GVWR well below that number. So if you're researching a conventional converted Class B, Clean Truck Check is not directly your concern yet. But if you're considering a larger diesel-powered vehicle, a Class B+, a Class C, a diesel pusher, or a larger motorhome, the threshold becomes very relevant very fast, and a significant number of retirees shopping for full-time campervans are looking at exactly those categories because of the additional space and range they offer. For vehicles that do qualify,
Annual emissions compliance testing has been required since January 2025, not a one-time certification, every year. You register in California's Clean Truck Check vehicle inspection system, pay the annual compliance fee, and submit a passing emissions test before your compliance deadline. Non-compliance can result in a registration hold. And the enforcement mechanism CARB has built is not passive. They use automated license plate readers deployed across the state to verify compliance, and they coordinate with the California Highway Patrol, who have authority to conduct clean truck check inspections at the roadside. Many motorhome and campervan owners in this category genuinely did not know the program applied to their vehicle. The compliance notices went to registered addresses, but buyers who purchased used, moved, or simply missed the mail are finding out at a roadside stop rather than at their kitchen table. That's the worst possible way to find out. Here's the buyer insight that should come out of this section. If you're choosing between a diesel and a gas-powered van for California heavy travel, don't frame it purely as a fuel economy and torque comparison. The diesel has a regulatory tail that the gas vehicle does not. Annual testing, compliance deadlines, account management in a government system while you're moving between states. For some buyers, the diesel is absolutely still the right call, but the full cost of ownership includes the administrative cost of staying compliant, and that only shows up after you've signed. And the most important practical question here isn't, is this van diesel? It's, what is this van's GVWR? Because that's the number that determines whether Clean Truck Check applies to you at all. Don't ask the dealer whether the program covers your vehicle. Ask for the GVWR and verify it yourself against the 14,000-pound threshold. That's the kind of question that tells a dealer and yourself that you're a buyer who actually understands what you're buying. Let me say something that the industry won't say. Everything I've described in this video, the tint issues, the weight violations, the emissions compliance gap, happens not because buyers are careless, it happens because the purchase process is optimized for closing a sale, not for protecting what comes after. A dealer's job is to sell you a vehicle. A converter's job is to build the vehicle you ordered. Neither of those roles includes verifying tint compliance across every state on your travel route. Neither of them hands you a weight budget and says, here's how much room you actually have. Neither of them asks whether you've looked at your GVWR relative to how you actually travel. That's not an accusation, that's just the structure of the transaction. The dealer shows you a beautiful finished van. The converter delivers a build that meets your specification, and then you drive away into 50 different state jurisdictions with different tint laws, different weight enforcement environments, different emissions programs, carrying every compliance responsibility that nobody at the dealership mentioned. The gap between what the industry tells you and what you actually need to know is exactly the gap that creates the scenarios I've described today. And it's exactly the gap that costs the most enthusiastic, most committed buyers, not the skeptics, the people who love their vans enough to spend everything on them. That's the conversation this channel is built around. Not tours, not gear reviews, the decision before the decision. Practical takeaway. Who should act on what? Let me be direct about what each type of buyer should do with this information. If you already own a campervan and you've never verified your tint compliance across the states you travel through, that's your first task this week. Get the VLT percentage for every window in writing from your installer, your conversion builder, or a tint shop that can measure it. Cross-reference it against the laws in your regular travel states. California and Florida are the two that matter most for volume of campervan traffic. If you're non-compliant, fix it before your next trip. If you own a campervan and you've never weighted at a truck scale with a full load, that's your second task. Not a back-of-envelope calculation, an actual CAT scale ticket with both passengers, full water, full fuel, and everything you normally travel with. Then compare that number to your door sticker's GVWR. If you're over, you have a weight problem that needs to be addressed, whether that means reducing your water carry, rethinking your gear load, or having a conversation with your insurance company about how your policy handles it. If you own a diesel campervan or motorhome over 14,000 pounds GVWR and you travel through California, go to the CARB website today and verify your Clean Truck Check compliance status. Look up the CTC VIS system, confirm your vehicle is registered, confirm your fees are current, confirm your emissions test is current.
If any of those three things isn't true, resolve it before you drive into California. Now here's who should think carefully at the purchase decision stage. If you're comparing a Sprinter-based conversion to a Transit 350 HD or a higher GVWR alternative, and you're a couple who travels heavy, full water, bikes, gear, a robust electrical system, run the payload math before you commit. The Sprinter is a genuinely excellent van, but its payload ceiling on some configurations is tighter than the marketing suggests. A platform with more headroom isn't a consolation prize. For some travel styles, it's the smarter decision. If you're weighing a diesel over 14,000 pounds against a gas alternative, specifically because you plan to spend significant time in California, do the full 5-year cost comparison, including compliance testing, annual fees, and the administrative overhead of keeping a carb account current while living on the road. The gas van might cost more at the pump, it might still cost less over 5 years. And if you're shopping for any campervan at all right now, make tint documentation, GVWR, and fuel type part of your evaluation criteria before you fall in love with a floor plan. Those 3 factors will follow you for every mile you drive. The kitchen won't pull you over. Those 3 things can. Here's where I land on this. The 3 things getting campervan owners pulled over in 2026 are not random bad luck. They're predictable, they're checkable, and they are almost entirely avoidable with information that is freely available if you know to look for it before you sign. The campervan industry is not going to walk you through this, not because dealers are dishonest, but because the transaction ends when you drive away, and your compliance problems start after that. The incentive to inform you exists from your side of the table, not theirs. That's the decision I want you to make with your eyes open. Not the floor plan, not the finish level, not the brand, the GVWR, the tint specs, the fuel type, and what it costs you across state lines. Those are the numbers that determine whether your campervan gives you freedom or gives you headaches, and they're all knowable before you spend $1. Don't buy the van that gives you the best afternoon at the dealership. Buy the van that gives you the fewest surprises 20,000 miles later. One question before you go. If you currently own a campervan, have you ever actually weighted at a truck scale, fully loaded, both passengers, everything packed for a real trip? Not estimated, not calculated from spec sheets, actually weighed it. Drop your answer in the comments, and if the number surprised you, tell me by how much. I think the replies on this one are going to be more honest than most campervan owners expect.